about a time when you've managed change as it relates to communications, dealing with employees.
Wow. When I think about change management communications, specifically dealing with employees, it brings me back to the last contract that I was on. I was brought in to manage the rollout of a new employee intranet, which is this great tool. But I was brought in to announce it to an audience that was already extremely sensitive to change. And by that, I mean their company had already been bought and sold several times.
Oh gosh, so
Okay.
they've been going through so much.
Yes. They had already been introduced to 2 other new technologies that were great for them, in their roles. But because they were bombarded with so much information all at once, they experienced change fatigue. So announcing another change, a new tool, it was something they were absolutely not interested in.
Even though it was going to benefit them.
Oh, it was totally going to benefit them. But again, referring to the change that they had already experienced, they had already been introduced to one tool, and then 6 months later, the company had changed it again.
Yeah.
So there was this mindset of, well, why adopt this new culture or this new technology or whatever the change is if you're going to come in and change it again later? So, needless to say, when I was brought in, they were not excited. They were not excited for anything that I had to say or, anything that I was going to be trying to introduce to them.
Right.
Because I had that insight going in, which was extremely valuable, I was able to make note of that, in our overall communications plan. But how I got that information was just doing a listening tour.
A listening tour?
Yes.
That sounds so intriguing. But
yes. So a listening tour is very, very different than doing a formal survey. That's what happens when you send out a survey.
Yeah.
Some employees might respond to it.
And sometimes if they do, they're like, not being totally honest or transparent.
Right.
Yeah.
Or if they are honest, it's about things that have absolutely nothing to do with what it is that you need to know or it is that you're asking. So doing a listening tour is a very, very informal approach. It's really just getting to know your peers, your colleagues, other people in leadership or decision-making roles, just by having light conversation with them while grabbing a coffee in the morning or inviting them to lunch. And through those conversations, I was able to identify several employees that had been with the company a substantial amount of time, had witnessed all of the changes, and they were able to give me some insight as to what worked well before and, what didn't work so well.
I feel like we as communicators in general, and especially when I've come across other people in our field, that there's something about us that allows people to trust us. They trust us with their concerns, with their praises. There's this trust factor that communicators have that allows, us to really be efficient at our job because people know that we're going to listen to them and that we're going to try to take action to rectify anything that's going wrong.
So either they have a sincere respect for our role, or they figure, well, in some cases, we might not be a part of the decision making, and they feel that they can share a little bit more, and then not come back. But doing that listening tour was really, really important. And what I learned of employee experiences with previous, changes was that they were tired of emails. They have been bombarded with communications only via email. And these emails were not short and sweet and concise by any means. I mean, they were like encyclopedia, like long emails with these super detailed instructions.
And what we do with those, what I do is I'll read the first couple of lines and then maybe skim through the rest, read the last line, make sure there's no call to action that I archive it.
Well, see, you're better than me because I look at the title and go, this has nothing to do with my job, and it gets deleted right away. And that's what was happening because the most important information, for, that particular role was buried all the way at the bottom. So they were just tired of getting emails that had absolutely nothing to do with their roles.
So what do you do to replace that mechanism of communication? Because you still have to disseminate information. So what ways did you improve that?
Well, one, we improved that by updating the employee intranet, which is why I was brought in, to help build a new platform, make it reliable. So we started doing more articles and making the internet a reliable resource again, so that way employees, when they were ready to access the information or when they felt that they needed, it was there.
Yeah.
They knew that they could go and pull it from a particular department page and they were set. It wasn't something that was buried in their email that they had to go and search for later, okay? And it was really used as a way to empower them, you know? Yeah. When you're ready for this information, we trust that you'll go and seek that knowledge, okay?
And I like that you use that. I talk a lot about empowerment on the Comms Effect because I feel as though it's an essential way to really engage your core audience, especially as it relates to employee engagement. If you are able to empower your employees, you're able to kind of make them feel included. And that sense of inclusivity is only going to promote engagement with them and promote the output of their work. So
yes.
Yeah.
So the other thing that we did in addition to adding more articles to the employee intranet was doing short videos. Hey, here's the most important information and here's how it's relevant to your role. Okay. We also used what I like to call unlikely stakeholders. You know, employees are used to getting a message from top leadership. Well, with these videos, we use their peers. You know, we used employees from across the organization at different levels to deliver a message as to why this particular technology or why the change in our culture, our organizational culture was happening, what it meant, and how it would benefit their roles. And that went over really well too.
You
So
made it relatable.
yes, you have to make it relatable. But the videos with the bite-sized information, like just enough information, went over really well.
Cool. Well, do you remember what like the engagement metrics were for those?
Well, not hard numbers, but the employee intranet before working on this particular project was not used.
Okay.
Okay, it really wasn't. The only page that employees went to was the home page, and they had to because that was the only way for them to access their email. But they were not going to any of the other department pages. You know, they weren't checking out any of the other company news. And after we changed how we communicated to employees and made that intranet a more reliable source, placing new videos, there was a change in engagement because employees wanted to contribute more. So there was more use of the employee blog space, which was extremely helpful because when this company rolled out new financial software and a new HR system, the employees that were utilizing those technologies all the time created a community, you know, to where they could share tips and tricks on how to navigate the new systems, which was perfect because prior to that, they were getting the very thick manual of how to, you know, do this or do that, and it wasn't utilized, and it really wasn't welcome. It was just, they just felt like they were being bombarded with information. So having those key conversations up front, we don't want a lot of email. We want something that's a little cooler, you know, that we can access when we're ready to access it, really helped roll out the new communications, and those best practices were applied to upcoming changes too.
Yeah, and there was two things I heard from that. So not only were you empowering employees, but you were also providing them with a sense of community, a sense of inclusivity, and I think those two married together,
absolutely,
your engagement rates are only going to skyrocket from wherever it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's important that employees are engaged because if they're not, it hurts the morale, and if the morale goes down, so does the company's bottom line. It'll kill it for sure.
Absolutely, and that's like a conversation in and of itself. Right?
Yes, it's a totally different topic, but the takeaway is that whatever communications you do, especially internally, that they need to be employee centered, and if they're not, then you've lost your audience.
Yeah, focus on the employee, focus on what's going on internally and the stakeholders that you're serving, and then the engagement externally will only kind of grow and thrive and be more efficient.
It'll happen naturally.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Alisha. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to speak with us.
Thank you for the opportunity. This has been great.
You're welcome.